Hey everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. I have another educational video today where I'm going to do something a little bit different than I've done before. I've done individual videos on the third book on the reading list, which is The Myth of Self-Esteem, and then the first book on the reading list, How to Stubbornly Refuse. I'm actually going to combine the two books, explain why these books are different but also have overlap, take the principles from The Myth of Self-Esteem, how there's no such thing as good and bad people, only people who perform good and bad acts, break that down and use live examples in this book from page 96 and 97, and then kind of make a carryover. Because what I usually do in this book is break down the fear, sensory motor, ROCD, harm OCD, but I've never specifically kept it to self-esteem specifically and why self-esteem is a myth and why Dr. Albert Ellis and myself and Rob and many other people who follow his philosophy have practiced it and realized that the outcomes are much, much better than believing in self-esteem. And I'm going to show you how we do that. So the goal of this video is to teach you about what is unconditional self-acceptance. We're going to stay with unconditional self-acceptance and why that doesn't mean you give up on your goals, such as maybe wanting to look a little bit better. You don't just grow your hair out and become homeless looking. You never go to the gym and gain 100 pounds of pure body fat, which you could do. You could still accept yourself, but that's the misinterpretation that many people think. So before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button, comment down below. I would love a lot of engagement in this video because I want to know how many people think that self-esteem is important. And I'll explain in this video why I think it's actually the least most important thing when it comes to this perception of self-worth. So many people have heard me use this analogy. When you go to a fair, a county fair or a boardwalk, and everyone sees that game where you take the hammer and you bash it down, and you got to hit the thing, it hits the bell up top. But when you hit the top of the bell, right, you hit the hammer, it goes up, ding, ding, ding. Everyone's like, woo, that's the conditional self-acceptance. That's the perfect selfie that you think you took, the right quote, the right makeup, the perfect wedding photos, the things that make you feel really good, that you've attached your self-worth to, which is absolutely dangerous. And the reason why it's dangerous, another clear example, is think about an athlete. Think about an athlete who says, I'm a football player, instead of, I'm just a person who plays football right now at this junction in my life. I also do many other things. That way, when football goes away, which it ultimately will, just how myself with the body dysmorphia and the bodybuilding won't have the same physique now that I have when I'm 90, if I live that long. And realizing that it's just a thing I do right now, detaching that from the self. That way, when it goes away, I could be upset, but I won't crumble into depression and anxiety. So this book right here is, in my opinion, the second best book I've ever read in my life. The first book I'm not actually done with because it's Ray Dalio's Principles, which I actually will do a review on that book. I think it will be really good. I don't know if I'll put it on this channel, but I'll do a review of it in the Facebook group. So this book basically breaks down many, many, many different aspects about self-esteem. Now, self-esteem in the basic sense is I'm going to get in shape in order to prove myself. I'm going to do X to have Y, which means on the opposite side of that, if I don't get X, if I don't get in shape, then I'm an idiot or I'm a loser. If I don't fail in business, then I'll be happy. If I fail in business, then I'm a failure. Instead of, I would prefer to not fail in business. And if I do, it just means I failed in this one particular thing. So the introduction is called, Is Self-Esteem a Sickness? Is self-esteem a sickness? That's according to the way you define it. In the usual way, it is defined by people, and by people that work with self-esteem, that it's probably the greatest emotional disturbance known to man or woman, even greater than hating other people, which seems somewhat worse, but is perhaps a little bit better. Why does hating and damning other people seem worse than self-esteem, which almost always leads back to self-hatred? Well, it obviously results in fighting, acting against war and genocide. Pretty dramatic. While self-hatred produces more subtle results, like despising yourself but not necessarily committing suicide, living with your self-lambasting. Let me spend some time trying to clearly define self-esteem and dis-self-esteem. This won't be easy since definitions have been vague and overlapping for the past century, but for the purpose of the book, this is where I'll go. Self-esteem. You rate yourself, your being, your personality, your essence and totality in terms of two main goals. You're achieving success or effectiveness in your accomplishments, your school, your work, and your projects. When you succeed in getting what you want and avoid by what you don't want, you say that is good. That's great. But you also rate yourself and say, I'm a good person. When you fail to satisfy your achievement goals, this is bad and I'm a bad person. And the reason why this is a problem is because you're attaching the self, the person, to that, to yourself. You're attaching your failures and achievements to yourself. And that's not what's happening. You're just a person with thousands of different character traits in different times, in different scenarios, under different stressors. You're not the person that you think you are in totality. So when people say, I'm a bad person, maybe they have a harm fear, a POCD fear, a cheating fear, they would say, I can never accept myself. And that's because the act, they believe, is completely defined to the self. But it's not. People commit acts for a plethora of different reasons. Fear of losing control, that's a big one. Psychosis, that's a big one. Genetics, lifestyle factors, being pushed to the edge. The reality is shit happens in life. And to label someone as inherently good and bad people doesn't make a lot of sense when you can talk to 100 people, someone performs an act, and all 100 people won't view them as good. Maybe 80 view them as good, maybe 10 view them as bad, and 10 are indifferent. And then if you ask 100 different people, that might switch around in the ratio. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So chapter 4 is the most important chapter in this book, in our opinion. It's the chapter that we talk about in the webinars a lot, and that's psychotherapy and the value of a human. Almost all modern authorities in psychotherapy believe that people's estimation of their own value, worth, is exceptionally important, and if they seriously go against themselves or have a poor self-image, they will impair their normal functioning and make themselves miserable in many significant ways. Consequently, one of the main functions of this is usually held to enhance people's individual self-respect, ego strength, self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-growth. They frequently will focus so intensely on what a rotten person they are when they don't reach their goals that they will distract themselves from problem solving and will become increasingly inefficient. So this book is the basis of how you actually learn unconditional self-acceptance. And unconditional self-acceptance, again, doesn't mean you don't have goals and you don't have aspirations. But when those goals are not reached and you reach failures, as you ultimately will, Ray Dalio, in his book Principles, has a very good chart. It's very interesting, similar to OCD recovery, where it basically is this looping pattern that goes backwards and always continually goes up, but it always is going backwards. And that is mistakes and failures, redirecting, going forward. Mistakes and failures, redirecting, going forward. And that's where real growth happens. Growth is happening from changing your belief systems. Growth is happening from not writing yourself off as a human. So that was the first part of this book. Now I want to take these tools and I want to implement them into page 96 and 97. The reason why I like this book a little bit more is it's more practical and emotive in the exercises that it gives you. This book is very philosophical. It's not a light book. It's, 350 pages with the index, but it's a very philosophical book. Also, side note, reading this book is an exposure for people who have fears of not concentrating. People say, I can't understand it. You're not going to have it all locked down. You'll probably have to go back and read this a couple times. So this is the dib sheet from the first book. It looks like this. This is 98 and 97. Where there's filled in. The 96 and 97 are the ones I filled in myself. But I'm actually going to fill in self-esteem and the myth of self-esteem into this example, and then that's where we're going to go. Just realized I don't have any. I have a drop. How great. So briefly summarize the situation as objectively as possible. And that would be a lack of self-esteem, right? A lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-worth, self-pity, putting yourself down. So what are the belief systems that we hold that hold us back, those irrational beliefs? So I must have great self-esteem. I must be well respected. I must be well accepted. It's awful and terrible to have to always have other people put me down. It's awful and terrible to have people call me a bad person, okay? I can't stand not knowing whether I'm a good person or not. I can't stand not knowing if I don't have true values and true morals. There's no such thing as true values and morals. Your morals when you're 6 are different from your morals now. Your morals and values at 90 might be different from me at 32 and vice versa. There's no such thing as the true self. We break that down pretty clearly in many different videos. And self-downing. This is where I'm a bad person. I'm worthless. life isn't worth living, etc., etc. And what happens is that perceived notion of needing self-esteem, which then keeps you in that cycle, that hamster wheel cycle of compulsive behaviors, avoidance behaviors, unhealthy emotions. That's where the severe panic comes in, the anxiety, the depression. And then all these other maladaptive behaviors that we do, social avoidance, not taking care of yourself, not resting, being aggressive, not just assertive, but being angry. Now, that is how most people think. And what happens is, most people, it's funny, the illusion is so clear, and this is a work in progress for life. You're standing on this trap door and you have a rope in your hand. And you pull the rope and some prize shoots up and you go, woo, and then you fall through the trap door. You fall and you're like, whoa, where am I? And that's that self-esteem coming back down, which constantly needs to be replenished. The only people that can hold a high level of self-esteem are people who are super highly respected, never make mistakes, and are basically perfect, which nobody like that exists. And even the people that we think exist like that eventually do crumble usually, and that's key. So now that we have our A plus B equals C irrational belief system based around self-esteem, now let's actually go through and dispute that. Where is holding this dire belief, this black and white belief about needing self-esteem getting me? Well, it's getting me nowhere because my OCD cycle is continuing, whether it's religious OCD, harm OCD, POCD, false memory or real event OCD, anything where there's a fear of losing a value or a moral, which is where self-esteem usually needs to be constantly proven, and then that's where the cycle continues. You're constantly looking for reassurance. You're constantly checking if you're a good or bad person. You're constantly automatically ruminating, primarily automatic because the fear is still high, etc., etc. So where is the evidence to support my irrational belief that I need to be a good person? Well, the need to be a good person is based off other people's perceptions. If other people had no belief systems about good and bad people, more than likely these fears wouldn't stick because people are very afraid of what society will think about them. And agreement doesn't mean acceptance. Kirsty did a great video on that. If you go to our playlist channel, acceptance, search for that, it will come up. Really good. Is it really awful? Okay, is it really awful to not have great perceived self-esteem? Well, when you start moving away from self-esteem and towards unconditional acceptance, you realize you could do so many great things while still being upset when you don't reach your goals, maybe you don't reach your body image goal, but it's not attached to the self. And that's the key. When you look at these other famous people and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Reels, and they're crying and they're screaming about why you need to live up to certain things, that is purely conditional, and that's why it affects them so much, because they're so irrational about these statements. Can I really not stand always being the best at something? Can I really not stand being rejected by other people? Well, of course we could stand it, because people are rejected by other people much more than they're actually accepted. When we walk past people in the street, when say we're wearing an outfit, we don't know what people are saying about us. When I'm in the gym lifting a certain way, someone could be looking at me saying, that person's a moron, what an idiot. Oh my God, his clothes are so stupid. Oh my God, he wears high knee socks and these deadlifting shoes. Yeah, I do that. We don't know what people are saying about us. And when you actually move over to your effective new philosophy, which is the most important part, where your new belief systems are being formed. Now, just because you have this new belief system now doesn't mean you're going to feel better in the moment. But, I would want to do well, but I don't have to. I would like to be accepted / respected, but I don't need to, okay? It may be bad or unfortunate to not be combined the word respected and accepted, but I can still enjoy many things if people, don't want to be around me, okay? Even in jail. I don't like it, but I can stand it, and I can still enjoy many things. And then what happens is in time, as you practice this, as you bring down your compulsions, as you bring down your avoidance behaviors, and as you move towards a greater sense of unconditional self-acceptance, this starts to make a little bit more sense. The pieces start to fall together a little bit better, okay? And then this leads to your new functional healthy emotions, your new C. So no longer do you have panic, anxiety, depression, chronicness, addictions to avoid. Now you have healthy concern, disappointment, healthy anger and annoyance, sad, healthy concern for relationships, healthy sorrow, and healthy envy. And you have these new behaviors such as meeting friends and going out and trying new things, even if you fail and people think you're stupid, okay? Exercising, new assertive behaviors. You're not yelling at people to get your point across. not trying to prove yourself all the time, over and over and over again. So most people live their entire lives based on what other people think about them. And what other people think about you matters a lot. It matters for business. It matters, or else no one's business would be successful. But the problem is everyone attaches that to the self. And that's the key. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was really cool to put these two books together. If you're interested in our webinar services, please email info@ocdrecovery.com. You can ask about the webinar services and the coaching services. We have one-on-one coaching, and that gives you access to the WhatsApp groups. Thank you so much. Again, if you're looking for these books, it's at ocdrecovery.com underneath the resource tab. And looking forward to talk to you guys in the comments. Thank you so much. And as always, have a great day.